Saturday, April 8th, 2017. Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So, yeah, I'd like to talk about distractions, the Federal Reserve, the geopolitical situation, what's going on around in the world, the debt ceiling in the US, the UK economy, Brexit, the pound, gold and silver, loads of stuff. Just talk about things. I haven't planned this video, so I'm just talking of things as they come to my mind. But the main theme really is distractions. And what do I mean by that? Well, by distractions, I mean what the mainstream media, is spewing to us. And I think in the US and in the UK, the mainstream media is highly controlled by a few corporations, by policymakers. In the US, it's public knowledge through the disclosure of Operation Mockingbird that the CIA is involved in the media, CNN and all other networks. In the UK, the BBC is very, controlled basically by taxpayers, they say, but who are the taxpayers? The governments. What else? Yeah, and so lately, in the last few days, with what happened in Syria, with what's going on also in Sweden and Stockholm, you turn on the radio, all you hear about are, what's going on in terms of geopolitics, terrorism. You're bombarded by it, and I don't let it affect me. I listen to it, but, it kind of goes over my head because I try to keep my, keep sane and keep it real, as I would say, and focus on, on what you have to do and what your family have to do, what you enjoy doing in life, and try to ignore, the propaganda from the mainstream media, government propaganda, warmongering. I think there's a lot of dissonance, cognitive dissonance, which means, at this, they're saying, oh, we're being attacked by Islamic terrorists, but at the same time they tell us, oh, you can't be against Islam because that's racist, or, it's all so confusing, and at the same time, the big distraction is the financial state of the world, economic state of the Western world, the huge, humongous amount of debt that we've got. No one's talking about that. And that's what I want to touch upon because it's a huge distraction, everything else, in my opinion. About 3 weeks ago, the suspension of the U.S. debt ceiling expired. I think it was March 15th, the Ides of March. And there's a lot of talk, I even made videos about it. Right now, the debt ceiling in the US is officially just over 18 trillion, even though the national debt is almost approaching 20 trillion. So how can that be? You have a ceiling of 18 trillion, but you're actually at 20 trillion. Well, they need to come up with they need to raise the debt ceiling in Congress. So that's still out there. The U.S. Treasury can keep going up until, from what I've read and heard, until the end of May, the Memorial Day weekend. They will run out of cash, and if they don't if they haven't raised the debt ceiling till then, what's going to happen? We'll have to see. What else? Now the Federal Reserve as well, and this is like I was listening to Greg Mannarino. I like listening to Gregory Mannarino, and he said, the Federal Reserve, they increased their balance sheet from around 800 billion before the financial crisis of '08, and now it's like 4.5 trillion. They increased it by almost 4 trillion. And he said, it's a GDP of, most countries in the world. And I'm looking here at the Wikipedia IMF data about GDP. And for 2016, US GDP was 18.5 trillion. And European Union as a whole was 17 trillion. China, 11 trillion. Japan, 4.7 trillion. So the Fed has created, for almost the equivalent of the Japanese economy in funny money. They basically created out of thin air with no effort whatsoever, Mr. Bernanke and Miss Yellen. Germany, for example, their GDP is 3.5 trillion. Do you really think the Fed in a few years can create the German economy out of thin air? So we have to keep it real. This is all going to end in tears. And as Greg Mannarino says, we're not going to collapse. We're going to just go back to reality, and reality is going to be completely different than what it's now. But one thing for sure, these little pieces of metal, gold and silver, they've been real, and they've held that purchasing power for 5,000 years, and they're real. They can't be corrupted. I know their fiat prices are manipulated, but that's not going to last forever. I know yesterday was a pretty volatile day, to say the least, in the precious metals. And I think there was some manipulation, late afternoon in New York. Gold, silver went from almost 1850 and traded below to like 1780. Gold was up all the way to 1265 to 1270 most of the day, and then it just dumped and closed around 1253. Yeah, of course there probably was some manipulation, but they won't be able to keep it going forever. If they could, the world would be, every country in the third world, Latin America, Asia, everywhere, everyone would be rich, because all you have to do is print money and be rich. But it doesn't work like that. The US, and Western Europe, they're surviving on their laurels. They've been selling the family silver, so to speak. And that's why they've been able to keep this game going. But it's going to end in tears. And I think more than ever, people need to keep it, keep that in mind. Don't let all the Syria, Russia, China situation, Brexit, don't let that distract you. Keep your head, keep your eye on the balls, and do what you have to do for yourself, for your family, friends, just try not to let all the distractions, affect you. I know it's difficult, but I think people need to keep it real, so to speak. What about the UK economy? Well, we had some data yesterday for the UK economy. Industrial and manufacturing production, they were really weak. They were expected to be positive month on month. They came out negative. Like house prices as well. I think one of the indices was lower early this week. The trade deficit was a lot higher than expected for the UK, which means that the GDP is going to be weaker. Even with a weak pound, the UK hasn't been able to increase its exports. And it's a huge fallacy anyway to think that by debasing your currency that you're going to be wealthier because you're going to be able to export more. It's completely fallacious, because Germany and Japan in the 50s and 60s and 70s, their currencies kept appreciating, and they became more and more industrialized. Well, they reindustrialized after the war, and their exports kept going up and up with a stronger currency, and they became wealthier and wealthier. So it's a fallacy, in my opinion, that a weaker pound is going to help the economy. It's just going to make the people in the UK poorer, because our money is going to be worth less. So what else? No, that's it. I just want to reiterate that these distractions, especially the geopolitical distractions, are just what I think they are, distractions. The real important things are the destruction of national currencies that's going on. It's been going on since 1914, since World War I, when the major European powers went off the gold standard, when the Federal Reserve was created. And it's been a very long drawn out affair. We still had a gold standard till 1971, and then that, globally or worldwide with the dollar, and then we went off the gold, the Bretton Woods system. Nixon closed the gold window, and we've had a totally floating exchange rate regime, fiat money regime, for almost 50 years now, and it can't last forever, because the Achilles heel of a fiat money system is that it's based on debt, and the country that issues that debt, that money has to keep getting into debt, and that's the United States, and it can't go on forever. So very interesting times. So my advice, yes, keep it real. Don't buy the propaganda. I wouldn't care, people say, oh, you're listening to fake news, but it's all very, very, topsy-turvy out there. And I think, yeah, keep it real. And the most real things are things you can touch that have had a, monetarily wise, that doesn't mean to say that I don't believe in the cryptocurrencies, and I do. And I think, I know you can't touch them, but a lot of things nowadays you can't touch, but they're still real. Yeah, so sorry if I went on and on, just trying to talk about things. And later on today, I'll probably just sit down and watch a bit of golf. I don't know if any of you enjoy that, but the Masters is quite special. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, share it far and wide. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do. And I'd like to thank a lot of people who sent some donations yesterday. Yeah, thank you very much. And if you haven't donated yet and you want to donate, there's some links below in the description. I'll talk to you later. Have a good weekend. Take care. Bye.